Yes, well, as Lene said, I'm not here claiming to be any kind of expert in using the iPad. I was sort of dropped in it like a lot of other people. It wasn't something I had any experience with. And I'm not a particularly tech-centred person. I teach in the construction management program. My background is that I'm an architect. I was in practice for many years. I've been here at UWS now for 15 years or so. And I teach construction management students how to understand drawings. I do that in first semester, so we have this year about 300 intake of students. About half of them come from high school. The rest come from industry mainly. They're people with trade backgrounds or who are just interested in working in the construction industry, and some of them have been labourers. Not all of them have their HSC. So we have particular issues with trying to get those people up to scratch so that they can manage a university education. They're interested in what we have to tell them, but sometimes they lack the behavioural skills of how you would behave, how you would learn at university. So this is the subject I'm using the iPad for this semester. It's called Graphic Communication and Design. As I said, there's about 300 students. We have a 2-hour lecture. We have a practical which teaches them to use a CAD program, a 3D CAD program called ArchiCAD. Most of our students are not going to be building designers, but they do need to understand drawings, and they do need to be able to interpret and read drawings. And to represent a 3D object on 2D drawings, especially when that's a building, is a skill that most people don't have and don't need to develop. It's actually quite separate from literacy or numeracy, and they're the things that we test to get people into university in the first place, mostly. So a lot of our students come without really any understanding of how they're going to operate, and we hand them a set of drawings and say, pretend that you're the local council building inspector and tell us what the faults are in these drawings, and they look back blankly because they don't even read the drawing in the first place. So what we're trying to do in this subject is to get them to look at some simple traditional technical drawing at the start. So they design a house. Everybody can design a house. Everybody lives in a house. So first up, they all say, yes, that's fine, and they do pretty poorly at it mostly. They make a gigantic house, and when you say that's not really efficient, and perhaps you couldn't sell that in the market, and they say, oh, but I like it, miss, and they keep it big. Eventually we get them to drawing something a bit smaller, a bit more rational, something that would actually work in the marketplace, doesn't have internal rooms and things like that. And then we try and teach them to document that design of theirs in 3D CAD. The 3D CAD program is quite complex to learn. It's a really powerful tool, and it has massive extensions that the industry is moving to. This is designed by a second year student, so he'd actually only had a semester of learning how to do it, and it is a 3D block of flats, 3-storey with underground car park, and I think he managed to do quite a good job for someone without any training other than the very limited training we can give them in our first year. So we do get people who understand the program, but a lot struggle with it. And this has been so forever. When I was a student, I remember academics complaining that students don't understand scale in drawings. They just don't get it. They'll do things that are distorted in the vertical dimension, and they won't understand that that's what they've done. Understanding scale is something that you can really only do from practice. So you get to see this building, and if you went around and measured it up and then you drew it up in plan and in elevation at 1 to 100, you might understand scale, because you'd have that building in front of you at scale and the actual building. But it's hard for people to do it when they're thrown in at the deep end. It's also hard for people to visualise in 3D when they work out a plan. So we ask students to design a house, and they do a house plan. Seeing that in 3D is another thing entirely. understanding that perhaps what you've drawn is a living room as big as this theatre is something that takes a while to get through. So we do work at getting them to understand the 3D program, and by happy happenstance, I guess, not by my planning, at the end of last year, there was some money available to do some videos that we put up on YouTube to walk people through the program. So we actually have 32 videos on YouTube explaining how you go through the program. Now, I thought they'd have to sit and watch the videos, and then they'd have to get their laptop with the program on it and work on it. Happily, with the iPad, they can watch the video on the iPad while they're actually working on the program. And it means that I don't get so many questions of how I open it up or how I do the simple things. It means that they're able to work at night when students seem to want to work, 3 o'clock in the morning. If they've got a question, they can get the answer from those YouTube videos. And it has worked out really well for us in that students are actually taking to it and explaining things and coming to me and showing me apps that they're using. One, a third-year student who's not actually in this, but who was a few years ago, came and showed me that he's working for a building surveying company. They have their own app, which means when he goes out on site to inspect a building, he can pull up the drawings and he can actually type in any comments that he has about faults. And it's actually part of his daily work life now. So we're seeing big changes, and in our industry, 3D modelling is becoming a really important part of any kind of building, especially when you put something new up against something old, which was often done a bit haphazardly in the past. And when you want to do something that's a complex shape, and you don't have to go to the straight pier and beam or straight up and down sort of thing. A complex shape now in 3D is possible in the way it wasn't in the past. So increasingly in our industry, we build our buildings virtually before we build them actually. And that has a whole lot of pluses. It allows you to coordinate all the different consultants that are involved in buildings. So all the different kinds of engineers and designers and other consultants who all do their separate drawings can now all do it in one 3D model. And we can do clash detections, which is something that in the past often only happened once the thing was halfway up. Yeah. We can also integrate our scheduling with our 2D model, our 3D model, and we get 4D CAD. So we can show a building in animation. And you can run through it, and you can find any of the problems that might be associated. It's really important in complex buildings, particularly additions, that you show the people that are working in the building, this is the time when you won't be able to get from that side to the other side, etc. And you can do that with animations, which is why our students need to know it, even though they're not going to be designers. There's also a whole lot of work being done on things like automatically taking off the quantities and doing the costing from building 3D models, especially when the model is a complex building. Quantity surveyors are not all that keen about that, but they're actually the people who run the models, so maybe they won't lose their job, they'll just find it easier. And there is a whole lot of work being done on complex buildings and how we put them together in 3D. Okay. The general field is called BIM, Building Information Modelling, and we have recently had an accreditation where the professional body is telling us to go to BIM to make sure that your construction managers understand technically how buildings are represented in 3D models. So people in the past might have said, I'm going to be a builder, I don't need to know any of this stuff. We know for the future now that they will need to know this stuff, and that it's a really powerful tool, and it makes things a whole lot more efficient, or it will, once everybody in the team understands how it goes. The program we teach them is difficult to learn, especially if you're new to construction drawing, and almost everybody is. The existing training programs that tend to assume that they're teaching architects who know another program. So they tend to assume that you've already got some knowledge, and they give really complex buildings and show you how to draw that. We want people to do something simple first, so then they know the tools. So we start from scratch, and we've used this two-screen solution. So we have 32 short YouTube videos, which were done by our best casual tutor, who really understands the program and is really good at it. And they are up on YouTube. They're being looked at by everybody, not just by our students. They're getting worldwide hits, and they're walking people through the program. And our students, who were initially perhaps somewhat reluctant to do this, are now finding they can take over. For many years, I've had feedback from students. Half of it said, we love ArchiCAD, and the negative half said, we hate ArchiCAD. And about equal numbers. I'm thinking that now we're getting much better feedback because students are not hitting a barrier that they can't do it. That in the middle of the night when they're trying to finish a drawing, they don't know how to do some simple thing. And now we can show them how to do that. I don't know if they actually are available on YouTube. I probably won't show them because they're a bit long. They're maybe about 10 minutes each, and there are 32 of them on particular topics. But the lesson for me is that computer modelling of buildings is a powerful tool. It was something I didn't even think of when I was learning to study buildings. But now it just enables a whole lot of things that weren't possible in the past. If you know the famous architect Frank Gehry, who's building a building down in Sydney for UTS, his buildings would not have been possible without 3D CAD. Just impossible. He would have had a bank of 100 drafters to do the things that one person can do on a computer now. So it's really important that everybody in the industry gets in and understands. There are barriers to it, and those barriers mainly have to do with the training and the background that students have. But we're finding that the iPad, along with help from industry-focused people, is the way to get through to our students and to lift them up and really give them a whole lot more employment opportunities than they might have had in the past. That's probably all I want to say. Renee, I'm happy to answer any questions.
That's great. Questions? If you'd like to ask Mary some questions about what she's doing with her students and using the iPads and using the CAD. Yes, Karen.
How much can your students do on the iPad? They're watching videos, but are they actually...
They can't use the CAD program. They can't, because a small screen is really not the way to go for a CAD program, which is always going to be large format. But they can actually import their drawings onto the iPad once they're done.
And can they mark them up?
They could do that with if they've got particular apps. They can actually import a PDF of their drawings, which is what they end up with from the 3D model.
So the student you referred to who was using an iPad on site, what that student was doing was taking PDF
Yep.
on site, marking
Yep.
it up, and then bringing it back.
Yes. Yeah.
Is the production process for getting your videos made, who made them?
Well, Lauren is maybe the person who can talk about that. There was actually some money made available, and they got an expert out from University of New South Wales who actually... Do you want to talk about it, Lauren?
I'm a curriculum advisor in school, and I came on board in the last year when Mary was making these videos. So we had, as she said, some funding made available through LTEX. So we brought in a professional who came in with quite an impressive amount of equipment and lighting and all sorts of things, and filmed the videos, gave some pointers, I think, to the
They went through a script revision system first before they started. He advised that.
So this one was the screen capture software that was used. So the professional gave some advice on structuring them for 10-minute type bits, and then he took that footage and edited it together and put it for us.
So he requested a script. So he wanted you to map out these 10-minute modules.
Yeah, we did that, yes. And I went through the scripts and had a look at them. We had actually done screen capture before, during the tutorials. But the problem was, there'd be this interruption with be quiet there, or, sit down please, and that sort of, a whole lot of class stuff happening. This was done purposely and there weren't any interruptions.
Yeah, so polished.
Yes.
Proof.
So who performed the operation of the software while it was being captured?
The tutor.
The tutor.
Yeah, yep. So he actually has it on his laptop and it's being captured and he's speaking at the same time. So he's explaining, we'll go to the wall tool, we'll go to...
Reading the scripts
Well, it wasn't read. The script was worked out, but he actually spoke to it without reading.
It sounds more natural if you actually talk more naturally than just read out something that's written down in detail.
Mhm.
So the script was more of a, this is the objective for this video,
Mm.
this is what I want to cover in this 10 minutes, and some pointers, and then he sort of spoke.
Mhm.
Did you want to make it more?
I'm just going to say, do you have a link to the YouTube video?
Amy put it up in
yeah.
the today's meet.
Yes.
Thanks very much, Amy. Amy's from the Web Services Unit. And if you have a look on the today's meet, she put the URL up there, so I suggest having a look at that. Are there any other questions, Mary?
Just to finish off there, the budget.
Mhm.
So say for the screen, sounds like there are a number of projects, but for the screen project, what was the budget?
Well, I only know the casual, what he was paid. I don't know the rest of it because it was handled at one remove for me.
30 10-minute videos.
Yeah.
That's 3 minutes.
It was a few thousand.
Yeah, he got a few thousand and there was, the other people were paid as well. I don't know about that.
It was, I think it was 7 for this particular project that I'm thinking.
Mhm.
But you don't necessarily have to get somebody in to do it. There is software that you can use. I might throw to Daniel. Can you talk very briefly? Daniel's from the Learning and Teaching Unit, and he's our guru about sort of desktop capture. Do you want to make some comments on that, please, Daniel?
Yeah, I guess it depends what you're after. The university has a license for Captivate, which can use for screen capture. That will you caption anything you're demonstrating and send it upload across multiple devices. I mean, our team also has the facilities to come out and shoot videos for you. That's what
Just the YouTube channel, everyone has, including Dennis and my team, the web services, or the many support staff have access to upload to that YouTube channel. So it's a space where learning and teaching videos from the university can be uploaded to, and then they can be embedded on YouTube, or they can be embedded on the website. All right, would you please join, sorry, Steph?
I was just wondering if you use any other external resources that have been produced by the party people, or
Yeah, the company that has the software, Graphisoft, has a wiki and it has a helpline and a whole lot of interactive information. We found our students weren't using it all that much, mainly because it was at too high a level for them. It was already people who were well into using the 3D CAD. That's what most of the questions were and most of the interaction was. Our students were asking really very basic questions and they didn't get their answers there.
Would you please join me in thanking Mary very much